hormone. Okay, so these thyroid and parathyroid, they are interrelated. These parathyroid hormone is released in the body when the blood circulation, calcium, okay, calcium in the blood level, when it goes down, it sends the stimulus to the parathyroid gland to produce more of these parathyroid hormone. Okay, and these are the functions of the parathyroid hormone. What does it do? Parathyroid hormone, it increases the absorption of the calcium in the intestine, and also helps in the absorption of calcium in the kidney, also helps in the conversion of the active form of vitamin D in the GI. Okay, and another important is it stimulates the release of the calcium from the bones. That is osteoclastic activity. That is के गर्छ bone मा bone बाट calcium लाई चाहिँ it will release from the bone and then it gets into the blood. That's why it maintains the normal level of the calcium in the blood. So whenever these calcium level in the blood is increased, okay, again that further send the stimulus to the thyroid gland. Thyroid gland releases calcitonin. Calcitonin ke garcha, it reduces the absorption of the calcium in the kidney. Okay, and then also decreases the release of calcium from the bone. In spite what it does the deposition of the calcium in the bone. So this is the normal physiology of the parathyroid hormone. Okay, or you can say the homeostasis of the calcium in the our body system, basically in the blood circulation. So just like thyroid, parathyroid also has different disorders, and it is associated with increased secretion of the parathyroid hormone and decreased secretion of parathyroid hormone. So basically we have hyperparathyroidism and hypoparathyroidism. Okay. So hyper, that is always associated with increased parathyroid hormone. It is basically, it can be primary hyperparathyroidism, secondary hyperparathyroidism, or tertiary. Just like other disorder, primary is very common. Okay, and it is associated with certain diseases or the disorder which is directly in the parathyroid gland. So in primary you have this parathyroid, this adenoma, or it could be the hyperplasia of the parathyroid gland, or it can be parathyroid carcinoma. Okay, in this also again adenoma is very common. Then you have a secondary hyperparathyroidism, which is less common than primary, and tertiary in a very chronic stage. If this secondary parathyroidism, if it lasts for a longer period of time, it can cause tertiary hyperparathyroidism. Okay, and it is also not very common. Then another is with decreased level of the parathyroid hormone, and that is called as hypoparathyroidism. So we'll be basically talking about the hyperparathyroidism and very briefly about hypoparathyroidism. So hypoparathyroidism is a condition which is due to excessive production of parathyroid hormone. So it is either by one or more of the hyper-functioning parathyroid gland. So it can be either one of the parathyroid gland is hyperfunctional or all four. Okay, this leads to hypercalcemia, and this fails to inhibit the gland activity in the normal manner. This hypoparathyroidism is classified as primary, secondary, and tertiary. Primary represents an autonomous, spontaneous overproduction of parathyroid hormone. Secondary and tertiary typically occurs as secondary phenomena in individual with chronic renal insufficiency. Okay, so primary hyperparathyroidism is the most common type of hyperparathyroidism, and it is an important cause for hypercalcemia. Okay, so it is an important cause of hypercalcemia. And among these primary hyperparathyroidism, the most common causes are adenoma, comprising of almost 75 to 80% cases. Then you have a primary hyperplasia. It can be diffuse hyperplasia of the parathyroid gland or the nodular hyperplasia of the parathyroid gland in 10 to 15% cases. Then third is the parathyroid carcinoma, which is very rare, okay, in less than 5% of the cases. Then age group is 50s, or it can be seen later in life, and again the most commonly seen in female female patient. Okay, female preponderance is more, almost 3:1 is the ratio. So, clinical features of primary hypothyroidism, we know that there will be increased secretion of PTS. So, along with that, there will be increased level of the calcium. So, hypercalcemia. So, what happens when there is hypercalcemia? More of the calcium, it is coming out of the bone and it's getting into the blood. So, bone becomes very weak. Okay. So, the bone density decreases. So, as a result of that, you have a painful bone. We'll come to it in detail. So painful bone, then more of renal stone will be formed as more will be deposited in the kidney, more absorption. So renal stone, then even GI system is affected. Okay, all the bowel habit and all. So you have abdominal groans, and it will affect the psychic, the mental status of the patient also. CNS also is involved. So you can just, for remembrance, you can say you have a painful bone, renal stones, okay, abdominal groan, and then you have a psychic moan. So that is in hyperparathyroidism. Then another important thing is, since it affects the bone, okay, bone disease and bone pain is very common, and that is basically, I told you, because of the decreased bone density, and these bones can undergo fracture. The bones are very weak, and because of the you say like the poor density of the bone, there is osteoporosis in the bone, okay, because of hyperparathyroidism. And there it produces a condition called as osteitis fibrosa cystica. This can come as a short note. Osteitis fibrosa cystica, the other name for this is brown tumor. So they can ask you like what is brown tumor, or write short notes on brown tumor. So it is not exactly, it's not a tumor, okay, and it is also known as osteitis fibrosa cystica. It is a mass that is produced within the bone. It is not a tumor, okay, and that is the result of hyperparathyroidism. This brown tumor of the bone, or osteitis fibrosa cystica, is nowadays, it's very rarely encountered, because hyperparathyroidism is usually diagnosed at a very early stage. Okay, patient will come with hypercalcemia and all, so you are able to diagnose it in the early stage. So very rarely patient will go for this brown tumor, osteitis fibrosa cystica. In this condition, what happens is there is increased osteoclastic activity, and it affects the cortical bone, that is subperiosteal, osteonal, endoosteal surfaces of the bone. And subperiosteal resorption produces the thin cortices. So cortices of the bone, okay, cortical thinning will be there. There will be loss of the lamina dura around the teeth also. Okay, and with the result of the bone, there will be this increased osteoblastic activity. The marrow spaces, okay, they are replaced by the fibrovascular tissue. You can see the micro fractures within the bone and secondary hemorrhages occurring. And because of these fractures and hemorrhage, what happened? There will be recruitment of the macrophages. More of the macrophages will go towards that site of injury. And as a result, there will be reparative fibrosis. There will be more growth of the fibrous tissue to repair the fractures and the hemorrhage which has occurred within the bone. Okay, and that gives the typical this brown tumor. So it is basically, it is the process which is producing the mass and all as a result of the microfracture and secondary hemorrhage. It is not a let's say tumor per se. It's not a true tumor. And the brown color is the result of the vascularity and hemorrhage, and it is also because of the deposition of the hemosiderin-laden macrophages in the cystic spaces. And the increased bone cell activity, the fibrosis, the cystic tumor, okay, it is the hallmark of severe hyperparathyroidism. That's why we say, like nowadays, it is very difficult to get the cases of brown tumor, because it is already, it's diagnosed as a severe hyperparathyroidism. at the early phases of the hyperparathyroidism. Otherwise, all the hyperthyroidism stays and is known as generalized cystica and can be seen in the severe von Wrecklingson disease of the bone. Okay, so they might ask you something about Brown tumor, but this is, if you know this terminology, generalized osteoitis fibrosa cystica, that will add some point. Okay, it's not necessary that you should know about this, but you should know about the Brown tumor. So this is the Brown tumor. See, these are all the cystic spaces filled with blood. It looks very brown in color because of the blood deposition, and maybe that is why the name is given as Brown tumor of the bone. In the kidney, because of the increased reabsorption of the calcium, there is nephrolithiasis, renal stones, with pain and obstructive neuropathy. Patient can have chronic renal insufficiency and abnormalities in renal function, leading to polyuria and secondary polydipsia. In the GI tract, gastrointestinal disturbances like constipation, nausea, peptic ulcer, pancreatitis, and formation of gallstones will be there. CNS, central nervous system alteration, will be there. So patient might have depression, lethargy, or seizures. Neuromuscular abnormalities, weakness, okay, muscle weakness and fatigue will be there. In the cardiovascular system, there will be calcium deposit in the valve, like aortic and mitral valve, and you can see the calcification over those valves. So basically, you see that bone is involved, forming osteoitis fibrosa cystica or Brown tumor, fracture, okay, hemorrhage within the bone. Kidney is involved, nephrolithiasis, pain, okay. CNS is involved, like depression, seizures. Apart from that, musculoskeletal system is also involved, and even GI system is involved, okay, including the GI and hepatobiliary, like gallstone, pancreatitis, then the altered bowel habit and ulcers. Now, this primary hyperparathyroidism, okay, most commonly it is genetic and familial. So it is very much associated with this MEN syndrome. During my thyroid class also, I mentioned about multiple endocrine neoplasia or MEN syndrome. I don't know whether it's covered or not. If it is not covered, MEN syndrome will be a different class. This primary hyperparathyroidism is also associated with MEN syndrome, both MEN type 1 and type 2. Okay, in type 1, what we usually see is we see 3P to remember. That means pituitary gland is involved, parathyroid is involved, and pancreas. So if the patient has this MEN1, okay, most of them, see 95% they have this hyperparathyroidism. So if somebody has this hyperparathyroidism at a very early age, you have to rule out MEN syndrome, multiple endocrine neoplasia type 1. Okay. Or it can be MEN2 also. Again, this is associated with mutation in the red gene. Okay, and in this also 3 things are there: medullary carcinoma of the thyroid, pheochromocytoma, it is the tumor of the adrenal, only in 20% cases. Okay, so more of the familial type of hyperparathyroidism is seen associated with MEN type 1. Okay, 95%. Parathyroid adenoma, okay, is the most common cause for the this hyperthyroidism. If you remember my previous slide, okay, parathyroid adenoma here is the most common cause for hyperparathyroidism. Okay, so we'll talk about adenoma, then we'll talk about hyperplasia and carcinoma. These are the causes for the primary hyperparathyroidism. So parathyroid adenoma, it's a benign tumor, solitary, okay. It is similar to the normal parathyroid gland. It may lie in close proximity to the thyroid gland, or sometimes it can be seen in the ectopic tissue. In the mediastinum also you can see the parathyroid adenoma. The size of the adenoma is around 0.5 to 5 grams, okay, the weight. and it is well circumscribed. It is soft. The color is tan to reddish brown in color, and it has a delicate capsule. The microscopic features of parathyroid adenoma, okay, they are composed of a very benign looking uniform polygonal chief cells. We have two types of cells, chief cells and oxyphilic cells, oxyphil cells in parathyroid gland. Okay, you must have learned this in the physiology. So they are composed of uniform polygonal chief cells. These cells, they have a centrally placed nuclei, and these cells, they are arranged in the normal looking this parathyroid gland along with nest. Okay, so you can see the oxyphil cells also along with the chief cells. Second is the hyperplasia, primary hyperplasia of this parathyroid gland. It is usually sporadic or as a component of MEN syndrome. Either single or all the four glands are involved. Even though if all the four glands are involved, we can see asymmetry. Okay, the hyperplasia is asymmetrical and with sparing of either one or two glands. Microscopic features, there will be hyperplasia of the chief cells. It may involve the glands in a diffuse or multinodular pattern. So two variants are seen, either diffuse hyperplasia or nodular hyperplasia of the parathyroid gland. You can also see the oxyphil cells, okay? And there will be delicate fibrous strands running, okay, in between these oxyphil cells and the chief cells. Third cause for this primary hypoparathyroidism is parathyroid carcinoma. It may be well circumscribed to invasive. So grossly only you can say that it can be invasive also. Single enlarged gland, okay, and these appear as a gray-white irregular masses. So microscopic features, these cells are usually uniform. Though they are carcinoma, unlike other carcinoma, they do not look very pleomorphic, okay. They are usually uniform and they resemble normal parathyroid cells. They are arranged in the nodular or trabecular pattern. You can see a dense fibrous capsule enclosing the mass. So what is the important thing to designate this as carcinoma is the invasion of the surrounding tissue. You have to look for the tumor invading the surrounding tissue and the metastasis. Because the tumor are very bland, it looks like a benign tumor. So you have to look for the invasion in the surrounding tissue and the metastasis, okay? Those are the reliable criteria to designate this as a parathyroid carcinoma. Now, secondary hyperthyroidism. It is the hyperthyroidism which is caused by any condition associated with a chronic depression in the serum calcium level. Because low serum calcium level, it leads to compensatory overactivity of the parathyroid gland. So there is increased parathyroid hormone and it is compensatory secondary hyperparathyroidism, and this is due to chronic stimulation of the parathyroid glands by a chronic decrease in the ionic calcium level in the blood. The etiological factors for secondary hyperparathyroidism is renal failure. So renal failure is compensatory, it will gives there will be increased parathyroid hormone. That's why it is secondary, okay? Then second is inadequate dietary intake of calcium, steatorrhea, or vitamin D deficiency. Then etiopathogenesis, because of the chronic renal insufficiency, okay? There is decreased phosphate excretion, because you know that parathyroid hormone, it has a function in the excretion of the phosphate also. That's why it is maintained, okay? So it results in hyperphosphatemia. So when there is increased phosphate level, it directly depresses the serum calcium level and further stimulates the parathyroid gland. So parathyroid gland gets activated. As a result, more of these parathyroid, calcium will be released. Okay. Another one is the loss of renal substance. It reduces the availability of this alpha-1 hydroxylase, which is required for the synthesis of the vitamin D. If you remember earlier, I told you this is parathyroid hormone is very important for the conversion of the inactive form of vitamin D to active form. Okay, so this is also altered. So this in turn reduces the intestinal absorption of the calcium. So as a result, again, more of calcium will be there in the blood. So grossly in secondary hyperparathyroidism, you can see asymmetrical hyperplasia of these parathyroid glands. Okay, because of the stimulation of the parathyroid gland. Microscopic features, you can see the hyperplastic glands with increased number of these chief cells, or also you can see the oxyphil cells. Okay, and sometimes you can see these clear cells, water clear cells, when they have a very clear cytoplasm. Again, these hyperplastic features of the gland, it can be either diffuse or multinodular. And fat cells in between these chief cells or oxyphil, this normal, these parathyroid cells, okay, you can see fat cells also, normally they are also decreased in number in case of hyperparathyroidism. Bone changes, they are similar to the primary hyperparathyroidism, okay, and users need to differentiate between the etiology. Then metastatic calcification can be seen in the many tissues, including the organs like lungs, heart, stomach, and blood vessels. So the patient will come with the features of chronic renal failure, bone abnormalities like you can see the osteodystrophy, and other bone symptoms are less severe than primary hyperthyroidism. In primary hyperthyroidism, okay, it is basically a very high level of this calcium will be there, more of bone resorption will be there. So bone symptoms, pain or whatever you say, fractures or the hemorrhage within the bone cavity was very much high. But here it is less compared to primary hyperthyroidism. The vascular calcification in the blood vessel, okay, it results in the significant damage, ischemic damage to the skin. So since there is calcification in the blood vessels, what happened? The area which is supplied by those particular blood vessels, it causes ischemic damage. Okay, so that ischemic damage, it can be seen in the skin and the other organs. And sometimes it is called as, this is called as calciphylaxis. Okay, because of the calcium deposition in the blood vessels, you are seeing the ischemic damage, and it is called, referred as calciphylaxis. So these are the features of hyperparathyroidism. So see, bone, this skeletal system is involved. You can see the metastatic calcification in different organs. Okay, muscle is also involved, kidney is involved. Basically in secondary, they present with the kidney symptoms, and if it is primary, they will have bone symptoms. Okay. Now, the third one is the tertiary hyperparathyroidism. It's very rare, not very common like primary and secondary. In patient with long-standing secondary hyperthyroidism, this tertiary hyperthyroidism, it occurs, it stimulates the growth of an autonomous activity. And in tertiary hyperparathyroidism, the symptoms are very much similar to secondary hyperparathyroidism. And basically it is the history, okay, that helps you differentiate between the whether it's a primary, secondary or tertiary type of hyperparathyroidism. And in this tertiary hyperparathyroidism, it's a long-standing condition, okay, it's a very chronic state. So parathyroidectomy, it may be necessary to control the hyperparathyroidism. So these are the causes of hypercalcemia. So whenever this part, okay, this part, so whenever there is hypercalcemia, if it is due to parathyroid, let's say lesion, you have hyperparathyroidism, could be adenoma, hyperplasia or carcinoma, see? Or if it is not involving, so if it is not involving parathyroid or decrease, these could be the causes. So you need to differentiate between the causes. If it is due to increased parathyroid hormone, it is mainly the endocrine. It is either due to adenoma, hyperplasia, it could be primary, secondary or tertiary hyperparathyroidism, okay, or genetic associated with men. And if it is associated, the hypercalcemia is there, but decreased PTH, means it is not endocrine. It is could be due to malignancy, could be vitamin D toxicity, could be the drugs or granulomatous disease. Okay, so this is one thing which you have to differentiate. Now, hypothyroidism. Hypo means decreased secretion of parathyroid hormone. So different causes are there. Out of this, the most common is surgically induced hypothyroidism. Means we have done the surgery for some thyroid reason. So total thyroidectomy, if you do, what happens? All the four parathyroid glands will be removed. So it is surgically induced hypoparathyroidism. Second can be autoimmune cause, autoimmune polyendocrine syndrome. In this, there is autoimmune hypoparathyroidism, which is associated with chronic mucocutaneous candidiasis and primary adrenal insufficiency. Okay, syndrome from earlier classes only, I'm telling you that not only one system is involved, multiple system is involved whenever we mention syndrome. So hypoparathyroidism, the most common cause is surgical removal of the thyroid gland. Okay, or it could be autoimmune syndrome, autoimmune polyendocrine syndrome. So here, apart from hypoparathyroidism, you have a mucocutaneous candidiasis and adrenal gland involvement. Another is autosomal dominant condition. Okay, it is by gain of function mutation in the calcium sensing receptor. So because of that, also there is hypoparathyroidism. Fourth, familial isolated hypoparathyroidism. This is also a autosomal dominant or autosomal recessive condition where there is decreased hypoparathyroidism. Then fifth one is congenital absence of parathyroid gland. It is absent by birth, congenital. It can be thymic aplasia, could be associated with cardiovascular defect or as a component of de Gouges syndrome. Okay, so congenital absence of the parathyroid gland. So these are the causes of hypoparathyroidism. So basically, in case of hypoparathyroidism, you will see the neuromuscular symptoms. Okay, these nerves and muscles are involved very commonly, and these in the neuromuscular system, what happens? These nerves are exposed to the low level of calcium, and they show abnormal neuronal function. Okay, so basically, you see somewhat like the spasm type of activity. Okay, or loss of this nerve function. So you can see paresthesia or tetany, abnormal spasm of the muscle, which is very much associated with hypercalcemia. Hyperventilation, some of the patient you might have seen hyperventilating. Okay, this occurs when the patient is having fever or some other condition, seizure condition and all. Hyperventilation, adrenergic symptoms and convulsion. Okay, so this convulsion is very common in young people. It can be either generalized or tetany, where you have a prolonged tonic spasm, it's a painful spasm, and sometimes it can take the form of epileptic type of seizure also. Okay, so these are the features of tetany. In clinically, we look for the Vostick sign and Trussell sign. Okay, Trussell sign and Vostick sign. These are the signs to find out whether it is a true tetany or not. And also you look for the extrapyramidal sign. Okay, which is seen due to the calcification in the basal ganglia. So if you want to know more about these signs, see, here I have written. This Vostick sign is elicited, okay, in the patient when you tap along the course of facial nerve. Facial nerve, angle of in the face. There you tap, and it induces the contraction of the muscles of the eye, mouth, or nose. So if it is there, it gives the positive sign. This Trousseau sign, okay, in this what you do is you have to occlude the circulation in the forearm. Forearm ma chai occlude garne. So what you do is you tie this blood pressure cuff, okay, in the forearm, and you occlude the circulation for about 2 to 3 minutes. Then that induces the carpal spasm, okay. Carpal spasm bhayepachi it will give somewhat like that, this feature. It's the type of tetany you can see in the fingers. So this gives the positive sign. So you do it as sign garera chai we can see whether these patients have these neuromuscular symptoms or not, and you can also rule out hypoparathyroidism. Okay, so the hallmark of this hypocalcemia is tetany, neuromuscular irritability. Okay, and these findings it can range from circumoral, okay, around the oral cavity, the circumoral numbness, to paresthesia, tingling sensation over the distal extremities, and the carpopedal symptoms. Sometimes it can be very severe. You can see the spasm of the larynx also, laryngospasm also, and it can also take the generalized seizures, and which looks like epileptic type of seizure. So it can be very mild or it can be very severe. CNS symptoms can be the anxiety, okay. There will be emotional instability like mood swings, depression, confusion, hallucination, and psychosis. Intracranial manifestation, as I mentioned, you can see the calcification in the basal ganglia, and there can be features like Parkinsonism. Ocular manifestation, calcification in the lens and cataract formation. Cardiovascular manifestation, there will be conduction defect, and you can see the ECG changes. Okay, ECG ma chai ni prolongation of the QT interval huncha. Dental manifestation, again there will be dental hyperplasia, or there will be a failure of eruption or defective enamel. So you can see a whitish discoloration in the teeth. There will be defective root formation, okay, and you can see abrasion in the carious teeth, abraded carious teeth. So these are all the result of hypocalcemia. So hypoparathyroidism, how you diagnose? So in the absence of renal failure, okay, the presence of hypocalcemia, and if there is hypophosphatemia, you can virtually diagnose that this is a case of hypoparathyroidism. Also, you can look for the parathyroid hormone level. Undetectable serum parathyroid hormone will be there, okay, and sometimes nowadays very small amount of this parathyroid hormone can be detected. So these looking for the serum parathyroid hormone and these clinical findings, okay, correlation with these clinical findings will help us diagnose the cases of hypoparathyroidism. So this ends the today's class. Okay, so in hyperparathyroidism, we talked about the hyperparathyroidism and hypoparathyroidism, the basic clinical features, okay, and the most common causes of these hyperparathyroidism and hypoparathyroidism. Okay, apart from that, you should be very familiar with the term brown tumor of the bone, okay, which is very commonly seen in case of severe type of hypoparathyroidism. So this